guys, it's Chantel with Wildberry Quilting, and it's part 2 of our spooky sew along, and we're sewing northern tracks. So let's get started. Alright, so we're back and this is part 2 of our spooky sew along, and we're doing northern tracks. And I am working on attaching the bear paws. So, I believe where we left off, I was about to tell you about a spooky encounter that we had on the roof of our house. What had happened to us one night when we were kind of just hanging out and watching movies. The kids had all gone to bed. It was just my husband and I. This was probably around 11 or 12 o'clock at night. We heard a very heavy sounding thud on the top of our house, right over the top of our heads. This thud, it was loud, but it wasn't like obnoxiously loud. It sounded similar to when a cat jumps from one object to another, how it's kind of padded or cushioned, and they're trying to be quiet, but you can tell the weight of the animal. That's exactly how this sounded. And we both immediately sat up and looked at each other and said, "What was that?" So my husband ran outside and to try and look and see what it was. When he looked up on the roof, he said there was a very large dark shadow and the eyes staring back at him. And his first thought was, "That's not a raccoon." And I can tell you by the sound of it, it definitely did not sound like a raccoon. It sounded much, much larger than that. We ended up running and finding a spotlight to try and shine up there. But by then, whatever it was had taken off. Now, we have had issues where we had a pet cat that disappeared. And we'd had her for a few years with no issues. Before she disappeared, while we still had her, there were stray cats that were all around the area, and they just kind of lived in the woods back behind our house. And those cats had all disappeared, and we thought it was odd because they'd been there for years, and they'd just always been there having kittens every year. And all of them, kittens and all, they just disappeared, and we hadn't seen them for a while. Our cat became very agitated one night, and she was an outdoor cat, and she was freaking out at the back door trying to get in, which of course is not usual for an outside cat. We ended up bringing her inside, and she got herself stuck between the screen door and the regular door because she was so freaked out. We tried to calm her down a bit, and then we let her out in the front yard. And she ended up, it was shortly after that she ended up just completely disappearing. And we really have no idea what ended up happening to her. We searched everywhere, and there was just never any trace left to indicate one way or the other what had happened. All we have to go on is whatever that large creature was could potentially have something to do with it. And there have been a few incidences since then where we've heard the loud or heavy thud onto the roof, and then it takes off. But again, we haven't ever spotted it, so we're not sure what it is. There are not supposed to be mountain lions in this area. My husband does believe that he saw one a few years ago, but not right by our house. It was a little ways away. So that could potentially, I guess, be part of it. However, that was several miles away, and we don't know for sure. We're also we're on the edges of the city, or the town, so it'd be kind of odd for them to come this far into town. And while we have a little bit of wooded area behind our house, it's not really attached to a large amount of woods. So you would think that whatever it was would have to travel across roads and stuff to get to our house before it could get to us. All right, let's go press these. So, in keeping with that unknown creature kind of a topic, we were walking along this trail in the Ocala National Forest. While it was out in the woods, it was definitely well traveled. Walking along the path by ourselves now, just my husband and I, and our oldest daughter as a baby in a stroller. And this large bird comes up over the top of the hill. Just a very small hill, like a knoll. The bird just walks up over the top like it was just wandering along its way, and we happened to be there. And it stops and it looks at us, and it looks at our daughter in her stroller. And we look at it, and this bird does not look like something that we have ever seen before. And we grew up in Florida, so we're pretty familiar with the wildlife there, especially being avid trail people. This was definitely something that we were not used to seeing. And it had a very large beak that went up over onto its forehead. It was all one continuous slant. It wasn't like on most birds where you see the beak and there's kind of, some kind of a slope. And this did not have any kind of sloping there for the connection between the forehead and the beak. It was solid. It was just like a straight line, and it was a very, very thick and robust beak. It seemed like, its beak was probably about like this, and it was huge. This bird was large. It was probably close to the same height as the stroller. I'd say it was maybe 3 to 4 feet tall. And it looked like a predator, for sure. This was definitely a predatory bird. And we looked at this bird, and it looked at us, and it looked at our daughter, and it was deciding what to do. And we're just standing there like, what should we do? And I looked at that bird and I said, we won't mess with you if you don't mess with us. And it looked at me like it understood, and it turned around and it walked away. Back over the top of that hill on the other side of the tree. And that was the end of that. And when we got home, of course, the first thing we did was we had to look up that bird and see if we could try to identify what it was. Obviously, it did not come back as anything that we had in Florida. And so then I started thinking, well, maybe it's an exotic species that somebody had brought over, because that happens a lot in Florida. One thing that I forgot to mention is the legs on this thing were massive. I have never seen a bird with such thick legs. It was really strange. And this bird's legs were just the thickest I've ever seen on any bird, and disproportionate to the size of the bird, I would say. You know, obviously we had narrowed it down. So at that point, I kind of was like, okay, well, we know what it's not. Let's look and see if we can't find any living creatures that fit it. Let's see what birds used to live in Florida that are maybe extinct or considered extinct that might look similar. And we did find a bird that looked just about identical to what we saw, at least in shape and everything. And it was some sort of terror bird. And like this little, well, not little, it's big, but this running bird that lived during, dinosaur type time. And I swear that is what we saw. That it looked just like that. If it wasn't that, then maybe it's some undiscovered distant descendant of that bird. But there is something that looks like a terror bird that's running around in the Ocala National Forest. And we saw it. And thankfully it did not attack us. It was not, I'm sure it could be vicious because it looked like it could be, but it was not interested in attacking us. And I will say that one thing that to consider is that when we looked into this, there are a lot of different species, or were a lot of different species of terror bird. And this was just one of the species that they have found remains of, and in that area of Florida. And it's just so coincidental that it, out of any of the extinct species we could have seen of terror bird, it happened to be one that was local to that area and considered to have lived there. So I would feel like it was less validating if it had been like a species of terror bird that was not native to that area. But the fact that it did happen to be one that was native to that area, I think just kind of, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that we have creatures still alive today that are considered by science or considered by the mainstream to have been extinct or become extinct. For example, the Tasmanian tiger for recent history, or the Silithiocanth. That was supposed to have been extinct for, ages. long before people were supposed to have been here. And then they found out that they were still around. So I think it's perfectly within the realm of possibility. And it's not like this is the only, there's plenty of other sightings of supposedly extinct creatures as well. All right, so off camera, I went through and I put together the border pieces with the bear paws. And now I'm just attaching these border pieces to the panel. So if you're enjoying these spooky stories, then please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I'm thinking that this is a series that I really enjoy doing, and I would love to put out more videos like this if you guys enjoy it too. And if you have your own spooky story that you would like me to tell, please feel free to email me. My email is in the description box. And who knows, maybe your story will be on a future episode, a future video of Wild Berry Quilting Spooky So Long series. All right, I'm just going to finish up putting these borders on, and then I will see you at the other camera angle for the reveal. All right, so this is the finished quilt, and I'm not quite tall enough to be trying to hold this up, but I'm doing my best. Oh, there we go. The wind is helping. I think it's adorable. I love it. I can't wait to get it sandwiched and quilted up. All right, thanks for joining me. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.